Peak, peak, peak. Peak has returned. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Or am I? I assume if you've clicked on this video that you have watched Arcane, or at least Season 1, and hopefully Season 2, Act 1. So let's not waste any time and get straight into it. Some quick qualifiers though. I am a big fan of Arcane Season 1, but I have never and will never play League. So I don't know anything about the lore, and please don't spoil it for me in the comments. This video will have some spoilers for the first 3 episodes of Season 2, so if you haven't watched, go and do that, and come back to this video. Of course, there will be no lore spoilers though, and these thoughts are scatterbrained. I'm not really going episode by episode, but just discussing the act as a whole. I'm just going to jump around. Now with that out of the way, let's get into it. Now I didn't watch much of the teasers and trailers going to the season because I knew I was going to watch it and I didn't want any plotline expectations. But going in, they kept the same opening, which I wasn't sure they would do. I like the song for the show. I think it actually fits the show pretty well. I think this cements that this is really meant to be a contained story, not some drag it on 3 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons. They said it's just going to be, this is it, the 2 seasons and call it a day. So it's really, I think, meant to be one whole package that when it's over, it's a really solid, consistent binge. I think the same opening song kind of fits that. As for the actual content of the series though, it picks up right where it left off after the end of Season 1. We see the aftermath of Jinx's shark cannon missile RPG thing that she shot at the council, and it was really interesting seeing where all the characters are now. Obviously you see half the council got cooked, and we're forced to see how Piltover copes with that, especially Caitlyn, because obviously her mom is GG's for her. So it picks right off. We see Caitlyn grieving and her relationship with Vi, her father, all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting. In the first episode though, the fight sequence of the invasion was really cool. They did a great job setting up that something was off. It felt a bit eerie going into that. And it's especially because right before that, we have the scene with Vi drinking with that big burly dude. And I gotta talk about that guy. But it seems kind of lax. You know, the ginger girl comes in, I think her name's Maddie, comes in, she's like hi, talking to Vi, she looks up to Vi. It seems chill, but then they go into the memorial and something's just off, but you can't exactly tell what. Like you see the people with the veils and stuff, and because you know it's been a while since Season 1, I just don't really remember, or I don't know enough about the lore to know, you know, is this a normal thing to have at these ceremonies or not. But no one else seemed to really be caught off guard by it, so I was okay, maybe it's not that crazy. But you could tell the characters eventually start to catch on, and it slowly builds up, and then it just explodes into some crazy sequence. So I thought that was really cool. But back to this burly dude. Who is this burly dude? This dude's broke man's Vander, man. He's just chilling with Vi, and then all of a sudden he's in the task force at the end of the episode where they go with Caitlyn straps up and takes his task force. Obviously I think this dude was meant to always be an enforcer. He had the uniform on from when you first saw him, but all of a sudden bro was just in the inner circle, like out of nowhere. So I don't know if this dude is meant to be known. Don't spoil too much about him, but I just thought it was weird that this guy was just all of a sudden in the crew and he barely even talks. But that being said, I like him though, so nothing against him. I'm curious to see where his story goes, especially because at the end of the act we see that he's not happy with how things are going and how Caitlyn's character is getting manipulated. So it'll be very interesting to see where he goes. I will admit, I was never too invested in the Piltover politics compared to the Jinx, Vi, Silco storyline of Season 1. I don't mind some of the focus they got here though. I'm intrigued by how Mbessa and the Noxus stuff with the Black Rose will weave into it. I think it's actually getting a little more compelling with the interworld politics that's going on here. And now that, especially since Silco's gone now, and that was like, in my opinion, probably the best character of Season 1. Silco was just an amazing character. So they do have to do some shifting to make some other things come to the forefront. But Caitlyn laying down the law and taking on her family heritage was epic. I can't lie. Not that Caitlyn's even my favorite character or anything, but, and then this is, you know, it's tough because you know it's going to lead her down a dark path. But as of right now, I'm like, hey, Caitlyn, you're doing what you got to do. You're in a path of vengeance, and no matter where this leads you, it did lead to some cool moments. But her using the vents her family built to smoke out the Undercity was brutal. Like, that's actually really brutal. It really made you sympathize with Jinx as she sees her sister doing that to her with the Enforcer uniform on. That was a crazy scene. It was really interestingly directed as well. But that's one thing I'm not too sure about, I have to admit. I know she has her thing with Caitlyn, but Vi putting on the Enforcer uniform seems a step too far even for her. Given how the act ended though, I don't think we'll see her in it again, so maybe that's just a short-term thing. Jumping around though, Savika versus Smeech is one of my favorite fights in the whole show so far. The new arm that Jinx built her is honestly genius, such a creative device for a fight sequence, especially since Savika herself was unaware of what would happen in the fight. It just was super dynamic seeing the cutting back from her pulling on the thing. We get the slot machine, all different abilities, and you're just going to see, what does that ability actually do? It's hard to tell just from the image at times. So it was very dynamic, that fight. I thought that was genius, and then the way it ends as well, it was super sick. I do wonder though if he knows that Jinx killed Silco, and if that will cause a rift between them later. I do want to keep an eye on that, and I'm going to come back to that in future videos, because right now they're on the same page because they kind of have had the same kind of relationship with Silco. But if she finds out, or if she doesn't know and then she finds out that Jinx killed him, that could be Jinx losing another part of her crew right here. So we'll see how that goes. It was funny though to see Vi and Caitlyn escalate and then end their relationship within a 10 to 15 minute span. I know the shippers are down bad right now. The Vi and Caitlyn versus Jinx and Savika fight was interesting because we had two long range versus short range fighter matchups. I was very curious to see how that would go, see if they were going to switch and try to make it more even matchups. But especially because, Caitlyn really wants her shot at Jinx. But it felt like real stakes for Caitlyn because her matchup was tough. Jinx versus Vi, that's also tough. But really, that gives Vi the upper hand if she gets in close. But we saw Jinx was holding her own in the close range fight. But Savika up close with Caitlyn, that's really a bad matchup. So I thought Caitlyn, there were some real chances for her to go out here. The end of the fight though asked some great questions and set up some fascinating developments. Caitlyn losing her humanity, Vi showing hers, but it was also a ploy to protect Jinx potentially. And Jinx seeing Vi being so human might cause her to view her like she used to, which can change the end game of the season. Because this episode we see, okay, the rift is too far, there's no coming back from it. Jinx killed Caitlyn's mom, and then Jinx sees Vi wearing the Enforcer uniform and smoking out the Undercity. It's too much to come back from. But at the end of the episode, we see there might be something there. Maybe Vi is still trying to protect Jinx, even though she said it was for the child. And then her trying to protect the child, they make Jinx see, Vi is actually not what I think she's becoming. So there's really interesting dynamics there, and I'm curious to see where that goes. It's hard to feel like it won't be a tragic ending though either way, as it might end up as a 1v1v1, or Vi having to choose between Caitlyn and Jinx, or Vi herself dying, leaving Caitlyn and Jinx to pick up the pieces somehow. I don't see how this can end in a happy way, and I'm very curious to see how they try to make that work out, if they try to go that route. The other storyline I wanted to touch on briefly though was the Jace and Victor stuff, which leads into the Echo and the Professor. First off, it's a little sus that Jace and Mel didn't have a scratch on them after that whole explosion thing, but Victor got destroyed. The fact that they made a point to discuss that too makes me think that it has something to do with Mel's glowing armor kind of thing from the finale. Not sure how it works though. I'm sure there's some lore stuff to that, so we'll see how that gets explained in the future episode, if that's really a plot line. But I'm glad to see Jace going down his scientist route again. I'm curious about how the stuff with the runes will develop. And Victor, on the other hand, is on his Lisan al-Gaib arc. He's definitely going to get a big following, especially if there's any kind of time skip. The religious imagery here is very obvious if you didn't notice it. He's very much on his Christ arc. So we're going to see what goes on there. But I will say, though, it might just be a coincidence, but him with the robe and the walking stick does remind me of the sorcerer that saved Jace in the past, if you remember Jace's flashback from season 1. It's not identical, but it's still interesting. I'm not sure if there's going to be any kind of parallels there, or if that's any kind of, if this goes time travel, I'm going to be very surprised. But, it's interesting to see where that goes. And of course, we still got that scientist guy, the Shimmer dude. He's spamming Shimmer. I'm going to call him the Shimmer spammer. That dude's doing some sus stuff with bears, and what I'm assuming is Vander's body. I don't know. That could be anything, but I'm thinking they kind of hinted at it in season 1 that might be Vander's body. So we'll see about that though. And just overall, I thought the animation was just still great. It's still flowing beautifully. It's a beautiful show overall, and they're keeping up the quality. I'm glad they took the time with it. Some hiccups though I had with the first act so far. The pacing was a little quick to start. I think it found its groove through the back half of episode 1 and through episode 2 and episode 3. But at the beginning, it was just a little quick. I think, luckily, I watched like a recap going into season 2. So I kind of was like picking up right where it left off. But I think especially if it's been 2-3 years since you've watched the first season, it's going to be breakneck pace to start off. But I think it's not really a major issue. And some of the music choices for me were iffy, which slightly hurts those music video sequences they like to do. But that's super subjective. If you love the music, then what does it even matter? But lots of lore stuff that came at us kind of quickly. I have faith in the show to give us more in the upcoming arcs, but I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really grasp the whole thing with the underground hex core gates or whatever they're called, and the wild runes and all that. So I'm waiting for them to develop that a bit more. But overall, I think people are being overcritical because the expectations are so high from the wait from season 1 that they imagine so many things that just realistically were never going to happen. It's just their fan fiction at the end of the day. And maybe it's not even super critical. Maybe I'm just seeing like the negative speak online, and really it's overwhelmingly positive, the vocal minority. But let the show cook. Act 1 wasn't the strongest from last season either. We know the show is ending this season, so let it build to a crescendo. But those are just some of my thoughts on Arcane Season 2, Act 1. I'm just excited it's back, and I just want to talk to people about it, so leave any thoughts you have in the comments. But thanks for watching, especially if you've made it this far. Like I said, let me know in the comments, have you watched Arcane Season 1? And if so, what are your thoughts on it? And if not, are you going to watch it? And of course, if you've seen that, and now you've seen Season 2 so far, let me know your thoughts on Act 1, how it's going, and whether you think it fell off or it's maintained the quality. Any predictions for the back half of the season? Real predictions, not I know all the lore, and these are just some fake predictions like they do on Reddit. Some real predictions. But if you have even 5 seconds to spare, it'd help a lot if you liked, subscribed, and all the other good stuff. There should be a new video out same time next week, probably about Act 2 of Arcane. So see ya.